Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 277. Greta, how's
Hey.
your day begun?
How's my day begun?
Yeah,
It's begun good.
good.
How about your day? How's your day begun?
My day's begun good too.
Well, wonderful. That is
Wonderful.
excellent news.
High five.
Yay.
Psst. Way to knock your microphone.
I know.
Dang.
Well, I'm kind of cramped here.
Blowing out people's eardrums again.
Sorry, guys.
In this episode, we will be exploring the first half of chapter 1 of the Silmarillion of the Beginning of Days. Before we get started, we'd like to give a double up air five to our patrons. Ready, Greta?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1. Whoosh. Boom. That was a good one.
We nailed it. Yep.
Special thanks to this episode's executive producers, John R. and Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien.
Thanks, guys.
Shout out to our newest patron, David G.
David,
And
thank you.
shout out to Ty M and Chuck F. Ty boosted his pledge and Chuck renewed an annual pledge. So
nice. Thanks, guys.
we appreciate you.
Yeah, we really do.
We really do.
Yeah.
Become a patron by visiting patreon.com/Tolkien Road. Becoming a patron is easy and lands you a bunch of cool perks like episodes early and ad-free. The more you pledge, the more you get. Learn more at patreon.com/Tolkien Road. All right. So quote of the week comes from chapter 1. And it goes like this. The dealing of the Ainur, that should be dealings, I'm not sure. Anyway, the dealings of the Ainur have indeed been mostly with the elves, for Ilúvatar made them more like in nature to the Ainur, though less in might and stature. Whereas to men he gave strange gifts. I really love that last part. He gave strange gifts.
Strange gifts. Yeah.
Tell us more about these strange gifts.
Please.
Yeah. Well, we're going to learn more about those strange gifts. Maybe not so much on this episode, but definitely in later episodes. And it's a huge theme that we'll get into, as we discuss more and more of the Silmarillion. And it's really a huge theme of the whole Legendarium. So the strange gifts that Ilúvatar gave to men. Yeah. So
strange.
All right, good. I just wanted to see if you had anything else to say, any value add opinion or thought.
No, I really appreciate. I know there's more to it, like the context of it's taken a little bit out of context, and obviously we probably will elaborate on that when we get to that part of the discussion. I think I read this little section twice because I found it very fascinating.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. All right, Greta.
Yep.
Are you ready to begin the beginning?
I'm always ready to begin the beginning.
Nice.
There's no better place to start. Am I right?
You're right. If I could, y'all, I would play the REM song right now, Begin to Begin. Because it's kind of a cool little guitar riff. But I can't do that because YouTube will then not allow me to. It's not like get in trouble, but they hit you with a copyright violation. And then if this video, if I want to monetize this video later on, then I can't. So I'm just not even going to bother there.
You can just sing it for us.
Anyway, I'm going to be like, there we go.
That was awesome.
That's the opening riff of Begin to Begin, done by me. Yeah, with air guitar.
I think that might be even better.
Yeah.
Than the original.
Watch, they're gonna hit me with a copyright strike anyway. Yeah.
That would actually be kind of hilarious if they did.
Not
cool, but hilarious.
Well,
I guess we'll just have to see.
Be a strange gift for YouTube to give us. All right. So
be a gift, I don't think.
Well, yeah, strange gift, as in not a gift and still strange. All right.
So that's a good question. Wait, if a gift is strange, does that take away its giftness? Because you were saying,
well, it may just be mysterious, right? So,
but it's still a gift.
Yeah, there's strange gift, and they're like, interesting gift, and there's strange gift in the sense of like, why did you give me these socks made of pizza, right? Like what am I supposed to do with these?
Oh, gross.
Right? I mean,
that was
that was just what came into my mind. Sorry.
I'm not surprised. Strange gifts, though, that's basically makes me think of white elephant, like the white elephant exchange that people do sometimes.
Those are fun.
Are often strange and fun. See, strange can be fun. Yep.
All
right, moving on.
Boom. All right, so chapter 1 picks up where the picks up the story where Ainulindalë left off. The Valar have entered the world created by their music, only to find it essentially unformed and in need of their labor to achieve the shape they had envisioned, and ultimately to set the stage for the coming of the Children of Ilúvatar. So as with every episode, we won't be covering every detail of this chapter, but instead doing our best to hit the high points and unpack interesting and important details. If we miss something you guys want to discuss more, let us know. And let me say, I really thought I could do the Silmarillion this time, sticking to one chapter per episode, but it didn't take long for a dose of reality. There's just so much detail in here, and I don't want to shortchange any of it or feel too rushed. So from here on out, I'm going to provide a synopsis as we begin each chapter, and then we'll take as many episodes as we need to cover it. So feel free to read ahead and circle back, or stick to the same pace as us if you so choose. The synopsis is there so that you can go ahead and read the full chapter and feel like you know where you're going, and then maybe you can go back and listen to the 1 or 2 or 3, however many episodes. This one will probably be 2 episodes on this chapter, but if we, there are other chapters, we're probably going to do like 3 or 4. I think when we did Beren and Luthien last time, we took like 3 episodes.
I was gonna say it was several. Yeah.
And a Calabaith will take like 4. I think we did 4 the last time around, and it can take, really you could take a lot longer with it. There's so much in there to unpack. So yeah, Tolkien, the Silmarillion is just such an amazingly detailed and majestic work. And like every paragraph feels like it's packed with so many interesting things to discuss. So I just don't want to rush ahead. I also don't want to get too bogged down. So anyway, we're going to do our best.
Yep. I'm going to try to strike the balance.
Righto.
Yep.
All right. So chapter 1, synopsis. Chapter 1 consists of the following events. The Valar come to Arda, but so does Melkor. Tulkas whoops Melkor. Whoops him. Melkor runs away and hides. The Valar make the 2 lamps, and this leads to the spring of Arda. Melkor builds Utumno and destroys the 2 lamps. Arda is forever marred, and the Valar establish Valinor, the Blessed Realm. The Valar create the 2 trees of Valinor to provide light to the world, and the bliss of Valinor begins. And then the stage is set for the coming of elves and eventually men, who we get some, what I'll call somewhat philosophical background on, on those 2 races, those 2 groups of the Children of Ilúvatar, to set the stage for their coming in later chapters. All right. Good synopsis.
Perfect.
I
think we can just stop.
Oh,
we're good.
Okay.
I mean,
well, I got a lot.
High points.
I got a lot more notes to discuss. So
okay,
let's do those.
Well, I think that was a good encapsulation.
Good.
Now we'll do a deep dive. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So
the first war. It all begins. The first chapter we learn about this first war in Arda. All right. So I'm gonna read this first sentence. Greta, you want to do the honors? You want to read this first sentence here?
The first sentence of the first chapter of the Silmarillion.
Yes.
Sure. It is told among the wise that the first war began before Arda was full shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon earth. And for long Melkor had the upper hand.
Yeah. So we have this first war, and it's capitalized, right? So this is what I'll call like a significant historical event within the history of Arda. It's really the first major historical event within the history of Arda itself. We know very little about this first war, right? It's a prehistoric war. It does not involve any Children of Ilúvatar. It's a war between the Valar and their hosts and Melkor. So Melkor has the upper hand. And by the way, what else do we learn? This was before Arda was full shaped, right? So Arda is like, it is not even close yet to what the Valar had seen in the vision, right? What they came into the world to achieve. And remember, that's their goal, right? They come into Arda to achieve the vision, to make Arda look like what they saw in the vision. All right. They're setting the stage for the later coming of the Children of Ilúvatar.
So there's basically not a whole lot for Melkor to destroy. He's really just out to get the Valar.
Yeah, I think he's destroying the things that they're trying to accomplish, right? It's like he's coming in and it's like, one kid's like trying to build build something with Legos or something like that, and Melkor is the one that comes along, and while they're not looking, he like smashes it, right, and throws it against the wall, right? I think that's what
he's kind of like undermining
their
efforts.
Undermining their efforts is a good way to put it, right? And anyway, I had a thought, but I'm going to hold off on that. It's because I want to make good progress through this. So, after this, we have Tulkas the Strong, one of who we know as one of the Valar from Valaquenta. And Tulkas whoops Melkor, like I said before. He whoops him, manages to best him, and sends him into the outer darkness. Okay. Outer darkness does not sound like a pleasant place. It says, so came Tulkas the Strong, whose anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering cloud and darkness before it. And Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, and forsook Arda, and there was peace for a long age. All right. So Tulkas is the one who has Melkor's number, and he manages to get Melkor out of the way for a good long while, so that the Valar can complete their work, right? So that they can make the things happen that they want, that they saw in the vision. So this is, I wanted to mention this, and somebody sent me a note this week, which happens to quote there's two things I want to mention in this context. One is a really interesting note that I received from I think a new correspondent, somebody I don't think I'd corresponded with before. And another is a really interesting theory that ties into Tom Bombadil. So I'll go with the one on Tom Bombadil first. So basically, I heard recently someone proposed the theory of that Tulkas and Tom Bombadil are one and the same, right? And I think it's a really interesting theory. I don't know that it has the best evidence to support it, but I do think it's a really interesting theory in the sense of like Tom being so powerful, and within his little realm at least, and being this kind of like laughing figure, like and Tulkas with having the same sort of disposition, right? He's this like happy warrior, laughter, all these sorts of things. And I didn't hear this theory developed a whole lot, but I at least thought it was interesting as I reread this time. I don't know that it's my top theory, but it was at least an interesting one that I'd never heard before, and I wanted to mention.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, and it was actually somebody. So it was a theory that C.R. Wiley told me about, who we had on the podcast recently to talk about his book on Tom Bombadil. You weren't part of that episode, but and I think it may have been. Anyway, I don't want to say this person is not a public persona as far as I know, so I don't want to put their name or their relation out there, but it was somebody he knew, and he mentioned it in that context. I can't remember if he mentioned it on that episode or not. So anyway, but I thought it was worth mentioning here that wouldn't that be weird if Tulkas and Tom Bombadil were somehow the same? Anyway, there's another note here that I want to mention, and that is from Lyle the Kindly Viking. So I received this a couple days ago, and I thought it was really interesting and a good one to mention in this context. Let's see if I can find it here. Well, here we go. So Lyle the Kindly Viking says, Magavan and Carswells, I discovered the Tolkien Road about 2 years ago and absolutely loved it. I have been listening ever since. I had an interesting thought while listening to your discussion in episode 274 about why Ulmo and Nienna are spouseless. Perhaps Nienna was originally intended to be the spouse of Melkor, since his fall is what created the need for a Valir of mourning. And, as I was reading this, and Lyle goes on to say, this theory has little to stand on, however, and besides that, I'm not usually inclined to this type of speculation, being a bit of a snob when it comes to Tolkiendom. I just thought it was thought-provoking. So I liked that theory, and I thought it was at least an interesting one. And then it got me thinking, Tulkas, so it talks about Tulkas entering here like he wasn't supposed to be there at first. Like this was the only reason he came. We were kind of thinking about the 7 Valar and the 7 Valir, of whom Tulkas is, is one of the Valar. And we talked about like how they correspond to one another. And this got me thinking that, and of course we learned later that Tulkas marries Nessa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this got me thinking like, well, was Melkor supposed to be one of these Valar and, one of the 7 Valar, and that's why Tulkas had to come and take his place, right? So was he actually supposed to be the one that married either Nessa or Nienna, right? In that regard. I just thought that was a really interesting sort of theory there to bandy about as well. Not something that I think Tolkien ever spoke to, but again, a little interesting theory to propose. So, yeah,
that is interesting. But Tulkas was a Valar though. He was one of the original 7, yeah.
Well, he is in Valaquenta, but you remember Valaquenta is more like a catalog. It's not really a narrative. And my point is that. And it says, in the midst of the war, a spirit of great strength and hardihood came to the aid of the Valar, hearing in the far heaven that there was battle in the little kingdom. And Arda was filled with the sound of his laughter. So the idea there is that the other Valar are already here, and Melkor starts messing with them, and they don't know what to do. And then Tulkas enters the scene, right?
I see. So he didn't originally come. He didn't come with the big group.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I think that's a good reading.
Yeah, and then it says later, and Tulkas remained and became one of the Valar of the kingdom of Arda.
Oh,
right? Yeah.
So maybe he wasn't one of the original.
Yeah. It at least makes me think that Melkor was intended to be one of the 7, right?
Yeah.
And Tulkas, takes his place.
I think that's hard to refute.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Anyway.
Yeah. Very interesting. Good food for thought.
Well, and thank you to Lyle for getting me thinking on that. And thank you to the person who proposed the Tom Bombadil theory for at least getting me thinking more deeply about Tulkas, who can sometimes just be kind of a, he's Tulk the Hulk, right? So it's, we don't really think too deeply about him. But it's interesting to have some different perspectives on him.
Yeah.
So the next kind of big, I'd say big section deals with the creation of the 2 lamps and the ensuing spring of Arda. So after Melkor is banished, the Valar have need of light. They have work to do. The 2 lamps are a joint. So these 2 lamps are a joint effort between Aule, Yavanna, and Varda and Manwë. So it's, 4 of the Valar really collaborate to make these lamps happen. So we have Aule builds, let's see. Aule, at the prayer of Yavanna, wrought 2 mighty lamps for the lighting of Middle Earth, which he had built, and the encircling seas. All right, so Yavanna wants the lamps so that she can really get to, see the flourishing of these seeds that she's sowing. Aule builds them for her, right, at her prayer. And then Varda filled the lamps, right, being the queen of the stars, and Manwë hallowed them. This is the things being hallowed is something we see at least a couple more times within this chapter. And that just got me to thinking, like, we have a very practical purpose from the other 3 in terms of the creation of the 2 lamps. But what does it mean to hallow them, right? Why was this necessary? Why is it necessary to hallow other things? And I don't know, Greta, like, what do you do with that? This is this idea of making something holy, right? If you're familiar with the Lord's Prayer, most translations say something about hallowed be thy name, right? And speaking like, ascribing holiness to the name of God, right? So what's the deal with making things holy? Why is this necessary? I don't know that we necessarily are going to have the answer right here for you, but it's a really interesting one to think about because Tolkien put this in there and he put it in there multiple times. So it's obviously something he's emphasizing the importance of.
Right. I guess the couple of things that I think of are 2 things. I think of protection and I think of entrusting. I feel like by hallowing them, it's almost like putting a hedge about them, like protecting them, setting them apart from any other creation, right?
Yeah.
And then the other piece I'm thinking is the entrusting, like entrusting them to the care of another. Which in this case I think would be Ilúvatar, right? Would be like almost dedicating them to him and trusting them to him, and in a way maybe ensuring their protection.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think those are all really good thoughts. I mean, I like the idea of like kind of rendering them back to Ilúvatar. Because I was thinking of the idea of completion. It's almost like Manwë comes along and like it's almost like he's putting the finishing touch on these things by hallowing them, by offering them to Ilúvatar, right? And that fits with his role, right? He's really the Valar that has the chief relationship, I guess you would say, with Ilúvatar. And so, he's something of a priestly figure. So
that's fair.
That makes me think like, I don't know, that there's a whole lot wrapped up in that idea, but just being able to look at them and say like, these are, these are blessed, these are, in accord with the will of Ilúvatar, like just being able to say that about a thing that's been done. Right.
And by hallowing the lamps, he's also hallowing the light that comes from them.
Yeah. Good point.
And if you want to take it a step further, really anything that falls under that light, anything that light touches would in it also be made holy. It makes me think of it kind of makes me think of the same idea of blessing a house or blessing a or even baptism, really, but just this idea of just kind of saying like, evil, stay away. Like it's just a way of setting a hedge about it, maybe.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot. And again, I draw it out because it's a curious little thing. We have very practical purposes before that. And then it's like Manwë howls it. And we see, if it was just that one time, I probably wouldn't note it that much, but we see it again. We see it happen later on. And not just in this chapter, but in the rest of the story. Right. So,
yep.
Interesting detail.
It is. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So the names of these two lamps are Ilúin and Ormal, and they're situated in the north and the like kind of very far north and the very far south of Arda. And with them, we have Changeless Day. We have Changeless Day, and then Yavanna seeds begin to grow. And at this point, the landscape of Arda is symmetrical. So you remember we talked about on the first episode of this Silmarillion reread, we talked about how the map of Beleriand, the maps that are included in the Silmarillion are not really helpful for the first 10 chapters. And it's true, right? We don't have a good map within the text of this world at this point. But the basic idea that we can look at is to say it's basically just a giant landmass surrounded by a sea, right? And that we don't know how far it goes. And then within that landmass, there's a great lake, right? There's a huge lake. And in that lake, in the center of that lake is an island, the Isle of Almarin. Okay. So that's really where the Valar established their first kingdom during this time. And it's in the very center of the world. And it's such a point where the light of Ilúin and Ormal meet, right? Kind of blend perfectly. So so symmetrical world, and that's how Arda begins. So this is known as the Spring of Arda. There's not really timelines given throughout the Silmarillion, but at least in Quintus Silmarillion. But to give you some perspective on how long this period is, I'm going to link to an article on the Lord of the Rings wiki on the timeline of Arda. I will say I don't think this is a settled answer. I think there is room for discussion on some of these things, and it's something that I think Tolkien himself wrestled with, how long to make this period. But at least according to the timeline of Arda, that's a good place. You can at least start your maybe exploration of this question there. And they say it was 5,000 Valian years, which in our years is 50,000, right? So 50,000 of our years, roughly. So that's a long time, right? Yeah. It's certainly longer than the history, much longer than the recorded history of mankind. Yeah. And it's interesting to think about what happened during this period. Like what was going on in Arda throughout these 50,000 years. So everything happens so quickly within this first chapter that it can seem like, man, they established this isle, and then all of a sudden, like, as soon as they have it done, Melkor like comes along and messes everything up again.
That's not the case.
But really, at least according to this particular timeline, it's a 50,000 year period, right? There's 5,000 Valian years, which is roughly 50,000 of our years. So, it was a long period. The Spring of Arda was a long period of time, and still no children of Ilúvatar, right?
Mhm.
There were no children of Ilúvatar, no
Mhm.
elves, no men at this time.
Yeah.
All right. So, as I alluded to, as you probably know by now, Melkor comes along and he devises schemes and destroys the two lamps. So, Greta, do you want to read this starting where it says, "Now Melkor began the delving"?
Yes.
And just kind of read to, I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay.
I'll touch your arm.
You'll
when to
touch my
stop.
arm.
Yes.
Okay. Now Melkor began the delving and building of a vast fortress deep under earth, beneath dark mountains where the beams of Illuin were cold and dim. The stronghold was named Autumno, and though the Valar knew naught of it as yet, nonetheless the evil of Melkor and the blight of his hatred flowed out thence, and the spring of Arda was marred. Green things fell sick and rotted, and rivers were choked with weeds and slime, and fens were made, rank and poisonous, the breeding place of flies. And forests grew dark and perilous, the haunts of fear. And beasts became monsters of horn and ivory and dyed the earth with blood. Then the Valar knew indeed that Melkor was at work again, and they sought for his hiding place. But Melkor, trusting in the strength of Autumno and the might of his servants, came forth suddenly to war and struck the first blow ere the Valar were prepared. And he assailed the lights of Illuin and Ormal and cast down their pillars and broke their lamps.
All right. So Melkor, they think he's gone, and apparently a long period of time elapsed where they didn't have to deal with Melkor. And then all of a sudden he's been up to no good. And he destroys the lamps. And it's really during this feast that Manwë had declared, right? It's we didn't read this section, but it's during this feast that Manwë declared, where it's basically a wedding feast for Tulkas and Nessa, right? So
and it's interesting. Sorry, I don't know.
No, go ahead.
Okay. That Melkor decided that now was his time to strike because Tulkas was asleep.
Yeah, right.
Which is really interesting to me because like all the Valar are in one place, right? Like you would think that would be the worst time, right? When all the powerful are together in one place, like that's not a good time to strike. But he decided it was a good time to strike because Tulkas was asleep. So it's almost like he could care less that all the other Valar were there, right? He's like, oh, I can take them, no biggie, because Tulkas is asleep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to me to think about this as a period of 5,000 or 5,000 Valian years, 50,000 years, because that's 1,000 years more than 49,000. And 49 would be like kind of 7 times 7, right? So in biblical numerology, a number like 7, a number like 50, 50 actually is a very significant number. So I think it would be, I'm not going to get the details of this right, but I believe it was like every 50th year was like a Jubilee year, and it was supposed to be this idea of like, it's a Sabbath, right? It's a rest. And, we might look at them and be like, why were they asleep? Why didn't they have somebody on guard? Well, 50,000 years had elapsed, right, since they last dealt with Melkor. So that's a long period of time, and they probably are just like assumed he was done, like he wasn't coming back by then.
They'd kind of let their guard down.
Yeah. Well, and I think we can be like, you let your guard down, dummy, but it's like 50,000 years.
It's a long time.
I probably let my guard down after 50,000 years.
Yeah. I mean,
and just assume he was, that we didn't have to deal with him anymore.
Yeah.
So
same.
Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting to think about that maybe this was like almost like a Jubilee, like celebration for them, right? Of the establishment of the Spring of Arda.
Yeah.
And of, all this work they had done. So anyway, just thought that number was interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. And it was a wedding feast for Tulkas and Nessa, but it was also, like you said, it was almost like a celebration, right? Like a resting from their labors. enjoying their creation.
Right.
Right. So stinky Melkor.
Stinky Melkor. All right. So yeah, Melkor destroys the lamps and Arda is changed. So the consequences of this for Arda are as follows. In the overthrow of the mighty pillars, lands were broken and seas arose in tumult. And when the lamps were spilled, destroying flame was poured out over the earth. And the shape of Arda and the symmetry of its waters and its lands was marred in that time, so that the first designs of the Valar were never after restored. Yeah. So this really, like, we had this symmetrical world, right? Very, beautifully constructed by the Valar, and it's forever marred at this point, and it starts to take a shape that we're more familiar with, right? So basically, after this period, we are going to get a world that includes the Beleriand that we see there, although we won't have any real action taking place in Beleriand. There's a little bit, but not a lot of action taking place in Beleriand until much later in the Silmarillion. So, yeah, he destroys these lamps and he gets away, right? The Valar go to Autumno to try to whoop him again, but he's gotten away at this point, and there's no getting to him. So,
but he's scared.
He is scared. Well,
so that's something.
He knows Tulkas whooped him last time, so he's got to run away from him. So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, what we get next is the creation of what we'll come to refer to commonly and regularly as the Blessed Realm. So this ends the Spring of Arda with the destruction of the two lamps, and the Valar essentially say to themselves, well, the world has changed now and we need to go establish our own fortress, right? Obviously we can't ever let our guard down again, so we need to establish our own fortress. So we're going to establish this Blessed Realm, and instead of in the middle of the world, they decide to go all the way into the west of the world. So they go establish this Blessed Realm in the west of the world, and to be clear, this is the same west that is the destination of Frodo and company at the end of the Lord of the Rings when they depart from the Grey Havens, right?
When they get on the ship.
Now, there's more to be said. Frodo doesn't technically go all the way to the Blessed Realm, but this is the direction they're heading in, and several and some people do go all the way to the Blessed Realm. So,
and that's also called Valinor.
Yeah.
The Blessed Realm is Valinor.
And to tie this into the upcoming Rings of Power show, we remember our image that was released, our official image that was released middle of last year, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what we were seeing and what we were likely seeing in that image. Right now, there's no one knows for absolute certain, but it's if the visual language they're using is not some way of distracting us, then we can say pretty clearly what we were looking at, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that. So
remind me, what was the initial image?
Yeah, so it was.
You're talking about the map?
No. This one.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you guys can't see it because I'm not sharing my screen, but you guys know it's with the figure in the white gown in the foreground and the two trees shining, what appears to be the two trees shining in the background.
Yeah.
So I'll link to that in the show notes so you can refresh your memory. All right. So,
and we had decided that was Valinor.
You and I
we
felt pretty certain we felt pretty certain it was Galadriel in the foreground and it was Valinor.
She was looking,
that she was
Valinor. Yeah.
She was looking towards Valinor and the two trees specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thus ended the Spring of Arda. Let's see. Did we already read that? Yes, we did. All right. No, I'm sorry. Thus ended the Spring of Arda. Yeah. Lost my place. There we go. How about you read this first paragraph and then I'll read the second.
Okay. Thus ended the Spring of Arda. The dwelling of the Valar upon Almeron was utterly destroyed, and they had no abiding place upon the face of the earth. Therefore they departed from Middle-earth and went to the land of Aman, and westernmost of all lands upon the borders of the world. For its west shores looked upon the outer sea, that is called by the Elves. Help me. Achaia, encircling the kingdom of Arda. How wide is that sea? None know but the Valar, and beyond it are the walls of the night. But the east shores of Aman were the uttermost end of
Belagear.
Belagear,
I believe that's how you say it.
the great sea of the west. And since Melkor was returned to Middle Earth and they could not yet overcome him, the Valar fortified their dwelling, and upon the shores of the earth they raised the Pelori. Is that right? Raised the Pelori, the mountains of Aman, highest upon earth. And above all the mountains of the Pelori was that height upon whose summit Manwe set his throne. Taniquetil,
Tanaquetil.
Taniquetil, the elves name that holy mountain. And
Here, let me help you out.
I was going to say, you should have read this paragraph.
And Oyolose, everlasting whiteness, and Elerina, crowned with stars, and many names beside. But the Sindar spoke of it in their later tongue as Amanhuilos. From their halls upon Taniquetil, Manwe and Varda could look out across the earth, even into the furthest east. Behind the walls of the Pelori, the Valar established their domain in that region which is called Valinor. And there were their houses, their gardens, and their towers. In that guarded land, the Valar gathered great store of light and all the fairest things that were saved from the ruin. And many others yet fairer they made anew. And Valinor became more beautiful even than Middle Earth in the spring of Arda. And it was blessed, for the deathless dwelt there, and they are not faded nor withered. Neither was there any stain upon flower or leaf in that land, nor any corruption or sickness in anything that lived. For the very stones and waters were hallowed. There's that word again,
Yes,
hallowed.
yep.
And it made me think of like the blessed and hallowed can be very synonymous. And it made me think that like so maybe that hallowing work is that Manwe and other Valar do is to make things permanent, to prevent corruption from getting to them. Right.
Well, it didn't work with the lamps though.
Well, because there was an active, like there was an active aggressor against them, right? It's not just like a natural process, right?
So kind of like the elves, right?
Yeah.
Like the elves don't die unless they're slain.
Exactly.
So kind of the same idea.
I think that's tied into it as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, a lot going on there, but basically we have a description of this, of some of the different parts of this land of Aman, which is established by the Valar. So Aman is the name for this whole region of the West, right? This whole land of the West. And you can get some good maps of this if you use Karen Wynne Fonstad's Atlas of Middle Earth, which I'll try to remember to link to in the show notes again. You should have picked it up already. If you haven't already, go get it. Well worth your investment. But I'm also going to provide some links to the Lord of the Rings wiki that'll provide some images that'll be helpful in situating your mind around this. So yeah, we have Aman, the Blessed Realm, which is the whole region. Then we have the Pelori, which is a mountain range on the eastern side of the land of Aman. And it's like huge mountains that are like, it's like their version of a fortress, right? You think about like for humans, we put up a fortress and it's going to be like, big walls and everything like that. Maybe like, couple dozen feet high if it's like a really big fortress or something. But for them, it was like, we'll put up some mountains, right? We'll raise some
Definitely
mountains.
Prettier than a wall.
Definitely prettier and a lot harder to climb.
Break.
Yeah, exactly. So they put up this fortress mountain range, and then they raised the holy mountain, okay, Taniquetil, Manwe, and it's Manwe and Varda's watchtower, right? Manwe and Varda from this holy high spot, which is the highest spot in all of Arda. They can look out upon all lands and see what's going on. So it has a variety of names, and I'll link to those as well. We read Oyolose, which is the everlasting whiteness. Amadwilos, the mountain ever white. It's Sindarin name. Elerina, crowned with stars. And Taniquetil itself means high snow peak. So yeah. So high, snow, holy, crowned with stars, all those things. Sounds like a cool place.
Yeah. I want to go to there.
Yep. And it's interesting to think about Taniquetil in the context of the mountain in the center of Numenor, right? Which is the holy place of Numenor. This is the place where the Numenorians, it's like where they have their chief 3 prayers every year that the king leads to Ilúvatar. Anyway, it just made me think of like, you have this high mountain here that Manwe and Varda sit upon, and there's going to be another mountain that comes into play, and Aman and then you have Numenor has its own mountain, right? So
Mhm.
it's interesting to think about like the symbology, the typology of the mountain, and being like the highest place, the meeting, the holiest place, in a particular area.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then we have again, to recap, Amon, the Pelori, Tanaquetil, the high mountain, and then Valinor, which is really, it's kind of the country of the Valar within the whole land of Amon.
So is the Blessed Realm Amon or is it Valinor?
Well, the Blessed Realm is kind of used interchangeably.
Okay.
And so it really applies to the whole region of Amon.
Like where the Valinor live, or where the Valar live.
This whole region, right?
Yeah.
And then Valinor is like kind of their state, right? They're like their chief area within the whole of Amon. And then within Valinor, and Valinor is situated on the other, it's to the west of the Pelori, right? So it's behind the fortress wall, a good ways behind the fortress
so the Pelori
wall.
protects
Yeah.
Valinor. Yeah.
And then you have Valmar, which is the chief city of the Valar. Yeah.
So the Valmar is within Valinor, which is within Amon.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we have this region of Amon, and Valinor is the state, Valmar is the city, right? So a lot of times the most common things we're going to hear referred to usually is like Valinor is kind of used to talk about this utter west, right? And it's the most common term that you will hear people bandy about, or the Blessed Realm. Valinor is just such a cool name. It's like one of the coolest names in all the Legendarium.
Really cool.
And it's just one of those kind of names where it's like, I don't know what that place is like, but I want to go to there. So Valinor, when you hear Valinor, it can either be referring definitely to that specific place, but people might also just be talking about, and Tolkien probably used it very specifically, but Tolkien fans might just be using Valinor to talk about like the Blessed Realm, right? Yeah. So but there's a lot of other places other than Valinor within the Blessed Realm. So
gotcha.
And we'll learn more about those places as we go on. Cool. Yeah. So that, kind of sets the stage with this first half. That's really what I wanted to cover in this particular episode. It sets the stage for what's going to come in the second half, and really the big events there. And the big event is really the creation of the two trees of Valinor, and the discussion what that means in terms of the Legendarium from here on out. That's really everything leading up to this in this chapter is kind of stage setting for that major event that's going to take place. And that event will lead to the two trees play a huge part in the rest of the story of the Silmarillion, right? And they're going to be a point of intrigue and just a lot. Like there's so much that could be said about them, and we will say about them. So we're going to spend a lot of time on the next episode talking about the two trees of Valinor.
Awesome.
So, as well as Elves and Men, right? So
lots to look forward to. As usual.
All right, Greta.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some haiku.
Oh yeah. We're gonna do it.
Oh yeah, we talked
about maybe waiting till the end of our second part. Yeah, maybe we'll wait
till we're gonna wait to the end of our second part.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like mine isn't really like for the first or the second half. Yeah. Like I feel like it goes best with the whole chapter. So I appreciate you waiting till the end of the next part.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was there any details in this, initial part that I skipped over that you think we should discuss? Anything that you had highlighted or noted that we didn't discuss?
I don't think so. No, okay. I think that was really good.
Yeah.
No, yeah. No, I thought that was really good. I can't think of anything else.
All right.
Yeah, how about you? Anything that you skipped over that you didn't mean to?
No, I covered everything that I thought I wanted to dive a little bit into. So, yeah, just I found that question of what does it mean to be hallowed in the context of Middle Earth very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting overall. Yeah. So, well, hey y'all, drop us a line. You can correspond with us in a number of ways: YouTube, in the comments, TolkienRoad.com, email, Twitter. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. So we'll do our best to respond to you somehow and at some point. Oh, hey, I did want to read our latest 5-star review.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
I love 5-star reviews.
I was a little tickled by this one.
Oh,
So
good.
Let's see, where is it?
I'm waiting with bated breath.
I know, I am too.
I saw the subject line and now I can't wait.
What date was it?
I don't know. I don't think you wrote it down.
No, I did write it down.
Oh, you did. Yes, you did.
January 24th was when I got this email, and there it is. All right. The title, I love these nerds. 5 stars.
That's awesome.
I want to let's just give it a double up air 5 for that title alone. 3, 2, 1. All right, so that goes out to Chester SC, who left this comment via Apple Podcasts on January 16th. I love these nerds. 5 stars. A deep dive into all things Tolkien by a smart and funny couple. I thought I knew a lot about the professor's works, but I always seem to learn something new listening to these guys. And I'm happy that they don't shy away from the role of faith played in Tolkien's life and works. Highly recommend this show.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you.
That is very awesome. So
really,
we appreciate
cool.
that.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all we got for this episode, y'all. Thank you to our amazing.
Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you to our amazing patrons, especially the following: John R,
Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien,
Ms. Anonymous,
Andrew T,
Red Hawk,
Shannon S,
Brian O,
Emilio P,
Zeke F,
James A,
James L,
Chris L,
Chuck F,
Azia V,
Ish of the Hammer,
Teresa C,
David of Pints with Jack,
Jonathan D,
Eric S,
Eric B,
Johanna T,
Mike M,
Robert H,
Paul D,
Julia,
Werty,
Matthew W,
and Joe Bagelman,
as well as those celebrating their Patreon anniversary this month in January of 2022: Tyler W,
Mike M,
Alina V,
Richard K,
Melanie,
Scott W,
Jason T,
David G,
and John R.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all so much, and we will talk at you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.